Every offseason, it's always a treat for us fans to see who goes where when it comes to free agents. There's also a spicy trade or two that happen to make hockeyless summers a little more bearable. When it comes time for each player to debut for their next respective team, there's always crossed fingers and held breaths that they'll gel with new systems. In this video, we're going to go over a handful of NHL players who haven't worked out with their new teams. We'll go over things like stats, contracts, and every player's unique situation. But before we do, if you're new to this channel or aren't subscribed yet, I'd love it if you could hit the subscribe button for more NHL themed content. And with that, here are 5 NHL players that haven't worked out with their new teams. In an attempt to surround Blackhawks star Connor Bedard with more quality talent, GM Kyle Davidson brought Bertuzzi into the fold. After having a solid season in Toronto, Bertuzzi showed up in Chi-Town, fresh off of a 21-goal campaign. He was also able to notch 43 goals in total, which made the idea of paying him $5.5 million for the next 4 campaigns not a terrible one in Davidson's eyes. Unfortunately though, after being inserted into the second line, Bertuzzi hasn't been able to find his game in the Windy City. So far, Bertuzzi has only been able to notch 4 points over a 13-game span. However, they are goals, so that is at least going for him. According to projected stats, if he keeps at this pace, he'll finish at a career low in points with 25, with a full 82 games played. However, the season is still young, and the forward definitely doesn't have as much pressure on his shoulders as a Hawk as he did in Toronto. Speaking of Leafland, one puzzling signing that was made last year was the one of Ryan Reeves. Reason being, Reeves, for some reason, was able to land an AAV of $1.35 million. That will pay out until he's 39 years old in 2026. Now this definitely isn't a knock on Reeves. He's funny, probably a great locker room presence to have, and he's threatening. He may not be the most threatening guy anymore out there, but he's still able to hang with most heavyweights, unless their name is Margiotta, of course. Anyways, aside from the intangibles, Reeves, while in Toronto, has contributed virtually nothing offensively. Well, 6 points in 59 games played, technically, but yeah, nothing. He is playing around 8 minutes a game, though, and has contributed more in the physical arena as well, as he currently has 194 hits as a Leaf. He's also blocked 19 shots while in Toronto, so that's something at least. Even still, knowing how cap-strapped the Leafs always are, this is still a puzzling one from all sides. Lately, it seems like a lot of attention has been on Boston due to the team's troubling start. After Jeremy Swayman got his bag, it seemed like he struggled to handle the pressure that comes with being the guy. And in case this may seem dramatic, if the playoffs happen today, or rather the 5th of November technically, then the Bruins wouldn't even make it. And I can almost hear this as I type these words, but Alyssa, your team isn't even at .500. Well, yes, this is true. Everyone went in with the expectation that Pittsburgh would struggle, but Boston? Not so much. And one of those reasons was the signing of Tomas Lindholm. For the longest time, Boston was searching for a competent center that wouldn't end up costing them a fortune. And GM Don Sweeney apparently found his guy in Lindholm. Lindholm, who will be making $7.75 million for the next 7 seasons, came to Boston with a decent resume. Lindholm had his first and only point-per-game season. Therefore, as he arrived in Boston, he had crafted a reputation for himself of being a reliable center. While he was in Calgary, Lindholm recorded 22 or more goals on 4 different occasions. After a mediocre performance for Vancouver, Lindholm probably intended to turn a fresh page with the Bruins. Unfortunately though, after playing in 13 games thus far, Lindholm is on pace to have an underwhelming 50-point campaign. Speaking of Pittsburgh, when Michael Bunting arrived in the Steel City, the hope was that he would be able to bring play that was comparable to that of a Patrick Hornqvist or even Chris Kunitz, a player who could be tenacious on the forecheck and a nightmare net front, which was what the Pens were hoping for after seeking out Bunting for his services. As most of us know, Bunting was traded last season to Pittsburgh from Carolina in a package that would send longtime Penguin Jake Getsel to Raleigh. And for a hot minute, Bunting seemed to mesh quite well, something that Dubas, who was familiar with Bunting, was hoping for, I'm sure. While the marriage seemed to work at first, it all of a sudden didn't. Once the regular season kicked off this year, Bunting found himself quickly being demoted to the fourth line by the time the Penguins faced his former team, the Carolina Hurricanes. After his slump continued on from there, Bunting was a healthy scratch. Therefore, coach Mike Sullivan didn't hold back while commenting on his players' struggles. "I think our expectation is higher," he said. So far, following 12 games played, shockingly, the forward only has a single assist to show for it. If the poor play continues, it's not hard to wonder if the team will put him on waivers like they did Tristan Jarry for a conditioning stint. Last September, Steven Stamkos made headlines that probably made GM Julien BriseBois want to avoid the media for a hot minute. As a two-time Stanley Cup champ, unloaded his true feelings regarding his contract situation. To be honest, I've been disappointed in the lack of talk in that regard. I can't write a contract for myself, he said. For me personally, it was inconceivable that Stamkos would ever play anywhere else. He'd been a staple in Florida pretty much since he was drafted in 2008. And once free agency came about, well, I was stunned to see that Stammer decided to sign with Nashville. Looking back today, it's understandable now as to what BriseBois was going for. He decided to sign Jake Getsel to a 7-year, $63 million deal. Essentially, he swapped one proven goal scorer for another. But Getsel was 29 when he signed, and Stamkos was 34. Anyways, over the summer, there seemed to be quite the buzz around the happenings in the Music City. Jonathan Marchessault and Brady Shea had also chosen to take their talents to Nashville, so it seemed natural that the hype would ensue. But similarly to Boston, there's the expectations, and there's the actual play. And they're on two completely different levels, just like most players on the Preds roster. Stamkos has been struggling offensively. Currently, he ranks 7th in points amongst his teammates with 2 goals and 3 assists in 12 games. Last season, for instance, Stamkos had already scored 15 points within the first 12 games. Granted, though, this is pretty much a new team considering all of the fresh faces that are involved in key roles. But American Thanksgiving is on the horizon and will be here in around 3 weeks' time. Therefore, if the Predators are wanting to contend this postseason, they need a jump fast. In conclusion, it'll be interesting to see where these players go from here. Will they continue to strive toward mediocrity? Or will they eventually turn things around? Let me know what you think down in the comments, as I'd love to hear y'all's opinions. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing if you haven't. I'd really appreciate it. And for those of you who aren't subscribed, there's actually a way to get even more of my content. There's this little thing called Patreon that allows you to support me in a way that's super personable. You'll get to interact with me while getting perks such as video uploads in advance, monthly shoutouts, and more. I'd like to thank my patron Thosha G for becoming a Tier 1 member, and of course all of my patrons for their support. If you're interested in supporting me monthly, simply click the link below, and if that's not for you, you can join for free and still see an occasional post. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.